Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm Jeff Pender. I'm joined here today with my colleagues, Taylor Vance.
Hey, Jeff.
And Michael Goldberg.
Hey, Jeff.
And we are attempting to recover from the auspicious 2025 regular session of the Mississippi Legislature. Long may it live. Yeah, it did. It just came to a stuttering halt, I guess you would say, and
It's pretty anticlimactic.
Right. The legislature, as most folks have probably seen by now, had some issues between the House and the Senate, and they left without setting a budget. So, at some point before the end of this fiscal year, which would be June 30th. Most likely, the governor will call them back into special session. But anyway, here today, why don't we recap some of the highlights and low points of the regular session just ended. Taylor, give us a broad overview of why things kind of didn't shake out in the end.
Well, I think there's been sort of some long sort of standing anger that just finally spilled over with both chambers.
Right.
Speaker Jason White and the House leadership made no bones about it that they wanted income tax elimination as their main priority. And
right, and that's been no secret for
was no secret
2 years now.
Right, even longer. But yeah,
they held public hearings. Again, no secret.
And whether you like the plan or not that they put it out pretty early and talked about it and went out and kind of tried to sell it to the public. And I think that the House leadership felt that the Senate was dragging its feet on tax reform, and they kind of weren't really debating, engaging in a conversation, and then kind of just to meet a deadline, they finally put a plan out. Here we got a plan.
That does seem to be the case. That the House came in with a plan, and the Senate not so much, and played a little defense. I think early on, Lieutenant Governor and Senate leaders said, yeah, we're for doing something with tax cuts. We don't want to do what the House wants, but
we'll take our time.
We want to do something, and we'll let you know eventually what that is. And that did not sit well with the House leadership.
No.
They were sitting on go from day one, right?
Right. And then, there was kind of the infamous typo now that the Senate screwed up some of its trigger language on how to reduce the income tax, and
it was going to be a safeguard.
And now it's not that much of a safeguard.
Right.
I mean, there still has to be a surplus for the trigger.
I guess again to back up to me a little bit. The Senate didn't have a plan of its own for the longest time. It put one out. Of course, the House didn't like that. The Senate goes back behind closed doors, and voila, we do have a plan after all to eliminate the income tax. But we're putting these growth triggers in it as safeguards that are essentially going to ensure it happens over a long period of time, 20 plus years most likely. And then to your point, they made a big mistake. It could be called a little mistake, some decimal points, but
it
effectively took their triggers out. As we know, the House and the governor ran with that, and it is now law.
Yeah.
And we learned yesterday, we'll of course get into what the governor might do going forward with respect to a special session, but we did learn yesterday, we asked the governor, when he calls a special session, would he be interested in taking a look at those triggers? I mean, he hasn't publicly acknowledged the typo or that a mistake was made. But he said plainly yesterday that he really is, he would consider it, but he's not particularly interested in reopening that conversation. I think he said it's kind of hard to imagine from his standpoint, a sort of, structure of triggers that would seem better to him based on where Mississippi is with its budget, its revenue coming in.
I mean, it's no secret. He said for a while he wants a quick elimination, and he really didn't even want triggers at all.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that gets less attention is the House had, I guess what you could say were some guardrails as well in their plans that the way things shook out are also not in there.
Right.
The Speaker had made clear numerous times they believed pretty sizable offset increase in sales tax was the prudent and safe thing to do. Well, both sides had major points they thought were safe and prudent, and the end product ended up with neither of those.
Yeah.
The House wanted initially a 1.5 cent increase in the sales tax, and again that didn't happen. So I don't know if you take them at their word that these safeguards were truly needed. Maybe we'll see if that's something they come back next year when they're not under the duress of a special session, when they get to set their own agenda. Maybe they'll come back and tackle some of those issues, and we'll have some time to see what tax cuts are doing.
Yeah, but I think going back to where all this anger kind of came from, and then I think the different chambers killed each other's main priorities, and
there's a lot of that.
Especially, I think it really ticked off the Speaker that the House, that the Senate, I think killed a lot of his K-12 education bills, school choice, sports betting, recurring revenue stream for PERS, among other things. I mean, I don't think the House was really too kind to the Senate's priorities either, but I think that really irked the Speaker, and then he kind of retaliated with this, and then there was sort of a breakdown in conference weekend budget negotiations, and
a breakdown on whether to even have budget negotiations, which one side showed up for negotiations and the other did not. That's
And, it really seemed as though being on the House floor, covering these debates, whether it was school choice, sports betting, you talk to the Speaker after, leading up to this typo, tax episode, it seemed as though the Speaker was essentially gearing up to reflect on the session as a net loss overall. And then, lo and behold, this opportunity on the income tax cut was sort of teed up for him. So as far as to the extent to which relations have soured at the end of session, it seemed like it was really teed up by the inaction on both sides and advancing each other's priorities.
And speaking of these tensions, discord, whatever you want to call it, it should be noted these are all Republicans. I've covered the legislature a long time, and there certainly used to be a lot of House and Senate tensions and everything, but they were primarily once upon a time because Democrats controlled one chamber of the House and Republicans had at least de facto control of the Senate. But man, I tell you what, now that they're all of one party, they really fight.
Just for some historical perspective, have relationships between the two leaders or two chambers ever been this bad where they just fight? Sure. I know they've always fought.
They've been bad, and you guys know if Bobby Harrison was here, he would always tell you they always say every year it's the worst they've ever been. But more people are saying that this year, and some of them have been there a long time.
Jeff, I've been a little surprised because my first session was the 2022 session, and they fought, but they got stuff done.
Right,
there was medical marijuana, teacher pay raise, legislative redistricting. They accomplished a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty, but they got it done. And here, they're just fighting and not really getting anything done.
I'm not going to say it's the worst I've ever seen. I've got 20-something years to look at, and certainly back during the tort wars. Right. There were major disagreements, and they've left without a budget before. But for anyone who might have thought that, okay, Republicans taking a supermajority in both chambers, we've got a Republican Speaker of the House, Republican Lieutenant Governor, Republican Governor, anyone who thought that might make things run more smoothly, that they might communicate better, that didn't turn out to be the case.
Well, I do have to say, as the resident carpetbagger on the podcast, having covered state government in other states where the majorities are a little bit more slim, I think there's more of an incentive to sort of compromise, get your act together, whereas I think when there's such a wide supermajority, there can be a fight over territory, over ideology, a bit of a narcissism of small differences. Not to say that there aren't legitimate disagreements sort of within the caucus that are getting meted out, but I think that more broadly there just isn't really, there's more perhaps of an incentive to fight it out within the caucus versus try to come to the table as adults sometimes.
Yeah. I have a couple of theories on all of this, but one is that for whatever reason, a lot of legislative planning and maneuvering, whatever you want to call it these days, is very secretive. The rank and file lawmakers much of the time don't know exactly what's being plotted and planned. I think that's part of what...
A lot of them ask us what's going on.
I think that's part of what bit the Senate in the butt with the typos. You could have done like the House, as you're developing a plan, hold some open hearings. God forbid, let the public see it. Those errors could have been crowdsourced and caught. At the least, maybe have a couple of open hearings where your own membership
can come in. That you bring tax experts in, and
again, back to give the House credit and the Speaker credit, they developed their plan in the open months ahead of the session. They held public hearings. They held a huge forum, town hall. I don't know.
Now it as I've complained many times before, it would sure be nice if we could go back and look at some of those legislative committee meetings, since they are not live streamed.
Sure.
I would wish for more open conference committee meetings from both chambers in general. But yeah, whether or not you think that income tax elimination is the greatest thing since sliced bread, or if you think it's going to be the downfall of Mississippi, he made his plans and intentions pretty clear, and here we are.
I guess now we're Governor Reeves responded yesterday, held a press conference. Yeah. The two of you attended a special session that he's going to call, gives the governor what little power he ever has over the legislature, and that he's the only one who can call them back in. They can't call themselves back in. And when he does so, he sets the call. He sets the agenda. He can't force them to pass something, but he can control what is before them.
The parameters.
And he can hold them there indefinitely until they do something or keep calling them back. So what were some of the things he said he might include? Obviously, he's got to get them on the budget, but he might also have some issues he wants to see them addressed. Did he?
Yeah.
Did he mention any of those?
He did. So at the press conference yesterday, and I would never claim to have an inside view of the governor's mind, but he did seem to be in a good mood yesterday. Perhaps the prospect of, increased executive authority had something to do with that.
We were joking. That's the best mood we've seen the governor in a while.
There was a lightness to him yesterday, but he did hint at a few issues that he might consider calling in lawmakers to take on in addition to the budget. He mentioned that there are a lot of conservative priorities that never made it to his desk this session. Chief among them would be school choice. So we've covered it extensively on this podcast. It can take on different forms, whether that's making it easier to transfer between public schools, sending taxpayer money to private schools, allowing students to use the money that would go to their base student costs to pay for tuition at a private school. all manner of different policies, several of which were kind of advanced in the House this session only to meet their demise in the Senate, or sometimes in the instance of sending public money to private schools, didn't make it to the House floor. The Speaker said there simply wasn't consensus, wouldn't have the votes to pass. There has been, and looming over that debate as the legislature was considering, in some cases advancing those policies, there was talk that it might not be prudent to move forward with an overhaul of the state education system at a time when, at the federal level, there is talk from the Trump administration of fundamentally reshaping the way public education is funded in this country, potentially abolishing the Department of Education, restructuring block grant funding. So that was cited as a reason for potentially hitting the pause button, not moving forward.
And we're already seeing some cuts this week,
right,
coming down the pike, right? I think the lieutenant governor mentioned he'd said 190 million.
I've seen 130 million.
Right.
We don't really know
it's
the
floating
specific.
around.
Coming from federal Department of Ed.
The speaker has hinted at conversations he's had with folks at the federal level working on education. So it's going forward, depending on, and I'm sure we'll get into sort of what different factors the governor is weighing as far as a timeline is concerned for when he calls a special session. But if we see more action at the federal level, more drastic changes, you'd have to think that would certainly enter into his calculus, trying to, potentially play off of what's happening at the federal level to force lawmakers into reopening that debate over school choice. It's certainly been a priority of his for quite some time.
I guess part of the what I've heard a lot of people surmise is that going into a special session from the viewpoint of the House or the Senate, it's likely the House might fare better if the governor starts feeding in issues. He's more likely to be aligned with some of theirs, but not totally, though. A lot of people, one thing the House wants is a projects bill, or what is often called a Christmas tree bill. That's very important to a lot of House members. That's where they take a couple of $100 million or more, and
especially freshmen. Lawmakers
divvy it out in special projects that lawmakers want. We have had other podcasts talking about that process, which some would say is the political spoils or pork or whatever you want to call it. But nevertheless, that's something important to the House, and that's something in my mind Governor Reeves may not be as likely to go along with.
He has criticized that in the past.
Well, and when he was lieutenant governor, he broke with tradition on the Christmas tree bills. That was back when they borrowed money every year to do it. But twice, I believe, he said, we got to pay down some debt. Nope, no Christmas tree bill. So that's something that the House may find everything not totally breaking their way in a special session. The House also wants sports betting.
They sure do.
Online sports betting in a bad way. A lot of powerful lobbyists pushing for that. Think the governor's open to that?
I think the governor, he was asked about it yesterday. He didn't bat it down. He did say that he's reluctant to keep lawmakers in a special session for an extended period of time, given the costs involved. But he did not, he did not bat that idea down that mobile sports betting, which the House has been pushing for, I believe this is the second year in a row they've passed it.
At
least the second. There is opposition on the Senate side, and there is, different gaming related bills that have potentially been held hostage as a result. So mobile sports betting is a live issue for sure, and whether or not it's taken up in the special session, it's not going anywhere.
I think it'll be interesting to see how the governor structures a special session and what it will look like. I mean, he's only ever called special sessions over economic development deals.
As he's pointed out, he's been reluctant to do so, to force a special session.
And he said with the budget, he essentially wants almost a 100% agreement from the House and Senate on the budget before he calls them in, so they can get in and get out pretty quickly. And he does not like long special sessions. He doesn't. He's never had one over just a general issue other than economic development.
He said he's not inclined to call lawmakers back to Jackson and have them, quote, stare at each other and fight over the budget.
They have done one time for more than 80 days. Speaking of tort reform, that would probably benefit no one. Look, we've talked a lot about what didn't happen, what got killed this session, and we could go on with that list for quite a while probably, but a few things did pass, some of them very late in the game. You covered the DEI measure that finally squeaked through under the finish line, over the finish line. Tell us a little bit about how that shook out.
Yeah.
The final measure.
So banning diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, and we could also spend an entire podcast getting into what DEI is. There are certainly different sort of conceptions of what it is, but DEI offices, generally, these programs that have existed for years on college campuses to the stated purpose is to help minority students adjust to campus life, various programs for students from non-traditional backgrounds. It's also sort of been wedded to certain concepts that have fallen out of favor with mostly conservatives. So their argument is that it kind of reshapes campus life in a way that infuses sort of liberal politics into every facet of campus. And curriculum, divisive concepts, et cetera. So it became very clear from the beginning of session, particularly immediately after the second Trump administration signed an executive order rooting out DEI across the federal government. It was very clear from day one that there would be a push to ban DEI. And I know from my time at the AP covering, DEI policy more broadly, that Mississippi is one of the last remaining GOP-controlled states to have not banned DEI. There was just some uncertainty last year about what the implications would be for HBCUs. There just wasn't really an appetite for it. Speaker White didn't have an appetite for it in his first session as Speaker. So this year it moved through. There were competing proposals in the House and Senate. On the House side, led by Representative Joey Hood, it was a much more sweeping piece of legislation they started out with. It, at the core of it, was creating a private cause of action, which means empowering students, faculty members, even those sort of not affiliated at first with the university, to file lawsuits alleging violations of this anti-DEI law. And
applying it to K-12.
And applying it to K-12 as well. That was the House stance. And the House ultimately ended up largely winning out. The Senate, they wanted to pair a DEI ban with an efficiency task force that would look at graduation rates, a whole host of other sort of data points, sort of trying to make the effort to ban DEI kind of provided some intellectual scaffolding for a broader effort to sort of look at reforming the universities in the state, making them work better. They ultimately scrapped that. They allowed for a private cause of action in the final bill that advanced through conference and was ultimately approved by both chambers. So the bill that is headed to the governor's desk would allow people to file lawsuits. It'll apply to K-12 schools as well, and it institutes the kind of preferred definition of gender into state law that's existed for a few years now. And really the only victory the Senate got, from my standpoint, is before one could file a lawsuit, there will be an on-campus administrative review process. So schools would have some time to resolve any alleged violations of this law before it goes to the court system.
Yeah, I would imagine since the lead Senate negotiator was Nicole Boyd, the Republican from Oxford, I would imagine that the sort of the in-house investigation was a creation of hers, since she wanted to make sure that some little known school in her backyard named the University of Mississippi would have a chance to take care of some things internally before they're faced with a lawsuit.
Yeah, we spoke to Senator Boyd quite frequently throughout as this legislation moved through both chambers, and she was very candid about the work that she'd put in dating back to last year, meeting with university officials, not only in her own backyard, but across the state. And it was very important for her to allow universities to, have that opportunity to keep this out of the legal system. And she ultimately did secure that win in the end.
Back to, again, the relatively short list of things that passed. Paid family leave for government employees. That was a big major thing that's been discussed for many years. That finally passed, and then
direct wine shipment.
I was gonna say, and then one of the crowning achievements of this session to a lot of people maybe allowing shipment of wine to Mississippi, specialty wines.
That's right. The winos can be happy. They can get that prized rare bottle of Napa Valley wine.
They cannot get a case of Mogan David, right? That's not how it works. But that too is something that's been talked about for a long time, and surprisingly enough, got passed in a session where basically they couldn't agree on anything else. Anyway, this I'm sure this session bears much more unpacking or whatever, and I'm sure we'll be doing more of that, and then gearing up for a special session whenever that may be, sometime before June.
Jeff, I might need to make some international travel plans before that happens.
We think we know. We won't say the date here now, but we, at least Michael and I, think we know when the special session will be. It will probably be when Taylor has a long planned vacation this summer out of the country,
which you've already approved of. So we can't back out. You keep
reminding me I've already approved that. Sure. So Murphy's Law, or whatever you want to call it, probably means that's when it will be. So anyway, well, thanks guys for helping run through the session that was, and we'll probably break down many other issues here in the coming weeks.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks,
Taylor.